Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G, and tonight we're broadcasting to you on our terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, KMPL, and Odyssey Radio. Remember, you can access our archives for free at youtube.com/spacedoutradio, and while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire, get some official Spaced Out swag, plus rock out to some Bumblefoot and so much more. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. It is Super Bowl Sunday here in America, and obviously this is a pre-recorded show. So at the time of doing this, unsure who the winner is. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and channel my inner football spirit and see who I can. Okay, I think I got it. Okay. All right. Congratulations goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Congratulations, Kansas City Chiefs, on a wonderful Super Bowl win. And in case I'm incorrect, congratulations, San Francisco 49ers, even though I don't like you much. Congratulations on a fantastic win. With that being said, this is a pre-recorded show, and normally what we do is we dip into the SOR archives and pick something out of there, but just said, you know what, we're going to do something a little different tonight, right? So what we're going to do tonight, in case you didn't know, I know some of you do know, I actually have a show on my channel called The Social Dig. And we dig into some of the deepest topics. We touch on so many different things over there. And I really wanted to introduce you to what it is that we do over there and to the format and kind of welcome you in, because you're obviously family here at Spaced Out Radio on the After Hours. And I would love to bring you into the family at The Social Dig, where the motto is, come join the conversation. Now, we've done call-in shows, and a lot of the people here in the audience have come over and participated in that. We've had people come on stage, talk about their experiences. We've had people even come up on camera, Van Gold and others, and I really appreciate it. And I think if you were to tune into it, I think you might kind of get what it is that we're trying to give over there. So what we chose to do tonight is go ahead and pick one of the shows that we've done recently. This one is going to be from season 2, episode 1. And what we covered was aliens and UFOs Why are they here? So you'll notice when you get over here, the format of the Social Dig, we kind of take you through a few different segments and then we wrap you up at the end. I really hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to go ahead and get that going here tonight. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Social Dig. And I would love for you to go ahead in the description down below and click on the link and consider subscribing and coming back and joining us for future and further conversations. So with that being said, I know you guys show your love and support. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show. And without further delay, let's go ahead and get to it. Welcome to the Social Dig. Welcome everybody to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show on the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And as always, we're going to be digging into the topics that keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. So come on in, kick your feet up, get comfortable, get ready to join the conversation. Really feels good to be back here at the Social Dig, man. This is a normal formatted show. This is what we have known to do here. Our call-in option is secondary. We will still continue with that, but just so glad to be back with the first show, the first real show of 2024. A lot of things to get into today. We are going to tackle some of the latest news, obviously with this being the first conversation of 2024 here. We're going to look back at last year and kind of look at the high points, low points as part of our disclosure news today. Also, pretty wild stuff going on. There's actually some big news happening right now that we'll end up talking about. Then we'll be getting into the main topic of the show, which is aliens, UFOs, why are they here? Like, I don't think anyone knows for sure why they're here. We can always take a look at some options and what seems most logical, what's the most logical explanation for it. So what I want to do is go ahead and invite everybody in today. I know this is a little different because we're going so early that this may have caught a lot of people off guard because a lot of the newer people who have come aboard don't even realize that we do this formatted show. So it's always a late night, notification. So it's a little different today. But I definitely want to thank Flat Six for coming on in. Kurt M, appreciate you coming on in. And yeah, it might be today, Kurt M. Hopefully, with the time difference, they trickle in. But if not, they catch it on the replay. But we're going to go ahead and get into some stuff because the show definitely must go on. And that's how we do it around here at the Social Dig. So let me see. Let's go ahead and just let me see. All we need really is you, Curtis. And that's all we need. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to go ahead, and it's been a while. I think with last show we did normal shows before going on to after hours. So we're talking about August, September of last year ended season 1. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you around the place. Show you how we get into this here. Let me bring up my promotionals here. So the way that it goes around here, go ahead and flip through here. We do have a call-in number. We have a segment called Ask the Chat. So post a response to the question in live chat or call the call-in message line, which is 856-843-3444, or that's 856-THE-DIG. What we're going to do right now is go ahead and jump into a segment that we call This Week in Disclosure News. So here we go. all right. So this week in disclosure news, we have a few topics that I want to go ahead and cover. We have, first of all, the 2023 year in review. Like I stated, it's the first show of 2024. So kind of want to get back in the saddle, get everybody up to speed who are the normal show viewers. We also have a topic about Sean Kirkpatrick, right? Because he's in the news right now. This dude is, I don't know what's up with this dude. I have no clue why he's taking the stance that he's taking at this point now that he's out of office. You could literally leave office, go off into the sunset, have nothing to say, no comments to be said. But he definitely wanted to make some comments. We're going to go ahead and go over some of those, maybe listen to a few. I know there's some articles that we could jump into as well. And then even alludes to, which we actually covered here in the live call-in show a few weeks back, that, okay, there's these drones, right, that some companies are working with that are spherical in nature. And we one of our viewers actually brought this to our attention during the live call-in show. Sorry, I can't recall the name of the person right now, but we did look at it extensively, and we'll end up touching on this, but this information was on the Arrow site the entire time. So that's not really any breaking news, but a lot of the skeptics of this subject are beginning to cling on it right now, because it's something that Kirkpatrick mentioned in one of his most recent podcast interviews. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what was 2023, right? I think we all can recall most of what happened, but let me go ahead and lay out the year from start to finish, because depending on how you look at it would determine the type of grade that you would end up giving 2023. We had a lot of great things happen, but then we had a lot of instances where it would appear that those that oppose this UFO issue stuck their head out and tried to, make various comments on trying to bring or take the sails out of, or the wind out of the sails of this movement that we have. So looking into this, grading 2023 for ufology, you may have seen this done on Spaced Out Radio After Hours, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at this here. So just laying it out. So we had, just to start the year off, okay, January 2023, a year ago, we had a UAP report that was late, that was due actually October 31st of the previous year. So this carried into 2023. This is the first time that we had any sort of information, or we had any input from anyone in regards to UFOs for 2023. The UAP report was late. It was underwhelming. A lot of people put a lot on it. A lot of people put a lot into what they thought it was going to be. And when it came out, they were underwhelmed. But my outlook on this has always been to look for the silver lining in, look for what wasn't said, right? Because yeah, they're not going to come out and they're going to say they're going to give us X, Y, Z, but they will unintentionally give you little Easter eggs, right? Because it's what they didn't say in a lot of cases. So with that being said, you'll see that theme a lot. I'll point out my theory on that. We'll say that. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, you could definitely let me know. So one thing that we know that was done with the UAP report being late, and we still don't know why it was late. I still feel like they were just thumbing their nose up saying, we don't have to abide by any of these timelines. Yeah, we know you said October 31st, but we don't have to do that if we don't want to. It seemed like a flex a little bit is what it seemed like. But in January of last year, when it came out, what it felt like to me was they were attempting to, and just hear me out, it felt like they were attempting to set up a play. And then we'll get into what that play was, because it was the next thing that happened in 2023. So In the UAP report that was late, it was pretty much nothing to see here except for the fact that they ended up mentioning what UAP shapes were. Prior to this, any previous report that came out, John Greenwald from the Black Vault had FOIA'd some paperwork on UAPs, and the shapes were redacted. If you recall that in 2022, he received that information, and they wouldn't tell us what the shapes were. And the whole argument was, well, what is that? What is the importance of why would you need to redact shapes, essentially? My theory back then in 2022 was I felt like, and I put this in one of my videos, actually my UFO sighting video. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely go check it out. But in that video, I theorized that the shapes were redacted because if they informed us of what the shapes were, then we would actually realize that we have been seeing these things all the time. Just weird random things where if they show you shapes, it might trigger something in your mind. Say, hey, you know what that is? I did see something like that one time. You know what I mean? So if they do that, then all of a sudden, here we go. So I was kind of surprised initially when the UAP report came out in January of last year that they actually redacted shapes and actually pointed out that there are these spheres, translucent silver spheres. Now, what that ended up doing was validating for me my sighting that happened in 2022, because the shapes that I saw were spheres, right? And I saw them up close. I have them on video. You can go back and watch them. Now, what that let me know is that the things that I was seeing were actually valid things in the scope of what it is that the government is keeping track of. So it led me to go further into where else these things have been seen. And I've done this in another video. You can go back and watch last season, episode 30, White Spheres in the Sky. And then there's another episode after that, which is based around MUFON. So those two videos, if you go watch those kind of catalog what I'm telling you here. Now, with the white spheres being finally admitted to as a shape that among other shapes, but mainly the white spheres, translucent spheres, were listed in the UAP report as things that they just didn't know what they were. Okay, so we had that, and then miraculously, coincidentally, 3 weeks later, we have this national, or actually global, situation where we're tracking these balloon-like entities, which is the phrase they used in the UAP report, that they were seeing balloon-like entities. Magically, we have a global presentation of these balloons, Chinese spy balloons that we put on camera. We had this huge display for the world to see. We allowed the balloon to cross the United States completely. And then we have the grand finale where fighter jets come in and boom, they destroy these balloon-like entities. If you ask me, I think the release in the UAP report, this is just my speculation, right? But I believe that the UAP report being late had something to do with preparing what happened a few weeks later. So to orchestrate the whole thing. So for them to say, how can we make a play on this and position this as potentially something that is mundane, like just a spy balloon. And I feel like they put that plan together, which delayed the UAP report into January, because literally 3 weeks later, we have a balloon-like entity incident. Okay, so that's how we're starting off the year. So it's already like, and here's the skeptics. The skeptics take that report like, oh, look, see, these things were balloons the whole time. See, you guys, I don't know what you guys are talking about. They've proven to you that these weird things in the sky are balloons. They just shot one down in front of you. There's nothing more to see here. So that was the first attempt by those opposed to UFOs to attempt to take down the narrative, right? So what do we have after that? So we're kind of like, trying to fight against this notion that what we know for sure, UFOs are UFOs, but to the broader public that is looking in at this for the first time, they could be confused by a situation where you have a balloon like entity being shot down. That could cause some confusion there on what it is that they end up believing, or the conclusions they come up to. So really not anything to do. We know balloons versus actual UFOs on this end. So okay, so we're kind of down at that point. I mean, they're taking a shot at us. What do we have next? We have the Arrow Gillibrand hearing. That happened in spring of last year, maybe a month or two after the spy balloon shoot down. And they kind of just piggyback, or Kirkpatrick, it was Kirkpatrick and Gillibrand and a few other congressional members, and they were asking him questions, allowing him to read a pre-written statement, and he essentially listed for the first time in 2023 that there's nothing to see here. We haven't found any evidence of extraterrestrial life, right? And Gillibrand didn't really push him that hard on asking some of the tough questions. But then, okay, so after this hearing, the skeptics are like, up, see, Kirkpatrick said there's nothing to see here. So hey guys, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but they found no evidence of extraterrestrial life. We know what we saw, so it's frustrating to hear something like that. We know that narrative isn't correct. And we'll kind of go in more about Kirkpatrick in just a moment because that's the next story. But after this Arrow hearing, Arrow with Gillibrand, we have the NASA Arrow hearing, right? And this is kind of where they doubled down, tripled down on the notion that nope, nothing to see here. And it wasn't really, as far as 2023 was going, it was just looking like there was nothing good that was going to happen here. It didn't feel like 2023 was moving in the right direction, because by the time we have this NASA Arrow hearing, it's already, I want to say, May, right? So we're almost halfway into the year. We haven't really had anything good happen in relation to validating the UFOs and where we're at in that whole situation. So it was really uplifting, and really the skeptics felt like 2023 was their year. They were slam dunking on a lot of people within ufology based on these statements that hadn't been proven, by the way. These are just statements that NASA, Kirkpatrick, and these guys have just made. No verification, no validation. This is just things they said. Skeptics are running with this. Like, see, we told you guys. But then one of the biggest moments of 2023 happens, in my opinion. We have David Grush stepping forward with the News Nation interview with Ross Coulthart. And he makes some epic, amazing, validating statements, because a lot of us already knew that the things he ended up saying were actually happening. But it was just refreshing to have someone who was connected to the program, someone within the government who was able to step out and say what he said. Evidence of crash retrievals that he's seen, or has talked to people that had evidence of crash retrieval, and evidence of or recovered biologicals or non-human intelligence, and essentially that he knows where the bodies are, and that people have been hurt along the way in keeping this thing secret. Okay, so boom, bombshell. So this negated all the negative work that was done by skeptics throughout the year. This kind of blew all of that out the water, and it was like, wow, globally this got crazy attention. Now, it was a chess move, because they already had the Grush information prior to the NASA hearing, but they waited because essentially if they would have done the Grush thing prior to NASA, then the year turns out a little differently, because you get boom, okay, Grush comes out, it's huge, and then right after that you have the NASA hearing where they pretty much say there's nothing to see here. So they would have adversely affected Grush's the coming out of Grush, we'll call it. So at the time they was chess. So they played that over, and then you had they didn't have anything, right? So the only thing that they had was what we'll talk about in a moment. But we ended up going from the Grush News Nation interview essentially. About a month or two later, we jumped over to the congressional hearing where Grush, Fravor, and I know I'm forgetting the third's name, Ryan Graves. So they were sworn in the oath in front of Congress and testified in front of Congress that the statements they made during that hearing was completely true, right? So they did that. So they tripled down, doubled down on what they were saying was fact and true. And so we had that moment. It was looking historic, right? We had the guy standing in front of Congress, hands up, swearing the oath. Historic moment for 2023. Didn't it seem like disclosure was a moment away at that point? Okay, then we had the guys from the other side, so the skeptics, the powers that be sent out their dogs, and they had reporter Ken Klippenstein. There was another reporter too. I can't recall the name, but Ken Klippenstein specifically came out and immediately tried to point out things within Grush's history, his PTSD, his potentially attempts on unaliving himself at certain points in time, the fact that he wasn't getting along with his wife, and just a lot of negative things. Like this guy, in his statement was that he did this because everybody was speaking so positively on Grush. So he just didn't like the fact that they were speaking positively on Grush. He said this. This is what he said on Breaking Points. If you go back and watch the Breaking Point interview, was great. The way they held him to the flame, but not only was that, so it showed that this came from a place of pure hatred, and not only that, and because he didn't believe that this stuff was true, he said this in the interview as well, that he just didn't believe, he doesn't believe that this is true, and that Grush is the only things he's hearing about Grush are positive things. Okay, wow. So that puts you in a position to go ahead and tear a man down. Okay, got it. So you had that, obviously was frowned upon by a lot of people. However, skeptics took that report and took it as another slam dunk. Like, see, we told you Grush was untrustworthy. His mind. They really ran with that, and it was sad. It was skeptics gripping for anything at a time where we had come off of something so historic. They were really gripping at straws and strings it was a pretty sad moment for them. I have to say. I mean, because you don't attack, whether regardless what side you're on, you don't attack a man, what's happened in his personal life. Things that were really weren't relevant at the time, period. Things that happened 5-10 years earlier. It doesn't make sense. So you have that. It was a moment where they tried but did not succeed. So what do we have after that? We had a couple other things that came up. We had the Las Vegas extraterrestrial incident, which I still think there may be something to that. I'm not gonna put my eggs in that basket, but what I'll say is I don't think that event was disproven. Let's say that. So I'll say that at this point for me, Las Vegas ET's not disproven. Okay, so that was a moment, right? That I guess you can consider with the way that it was covered and with the authenticity of the caller and the 911 call that we had. I think that was a win for ufology as far as someone not being afraid to report something. Okay, so you got that. Then we go into, and I want to say that Las Vegas ET might have happened before the congressional hearing. I can't recall, but we had then the ET reports from Peru. Now, we'll end up talking about some things. I don't know about the Peru thing. What I do know is that guys in jetpacks just sounds pretty crazy. I'm not going for that. So if you have a different explanation for what happened there, please let me know. I'm open to it. But moving on, we had a bombshell from Ross Coulthard where he states, in so many words, well, actually, he stated this specifically, but he wouldn't really elaborate, is that he stated that he was told about retrieved craft so big that they had to build a building around that. I'm still waiting to see what that is. I still want to know what that is. Ross, if you have more information on that, I hope you're at least have someone keeping an eye on that situation, and hopefully it's something you can report to more later. But we had that. That was kind of a huge statement to make. All right. Then we had the Schumer amendment, trying to get that prepared. We had the opposition from a few in Congress who just so happened to be have attachments to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and also I want to say Raytheon, or one of the contractors. So just really weird that those would happen to be the people that are opposing this amendment. But it ended up being passed without some of the key things that we wanted in there. And then here's kind of what really took me by surprise. So now we're at the end of 2023. We're probably in the last week or two of 2023. And then we get the Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who just out of nowhere wasn't on the radar, at least that I know of, and just comes out and says that not only have we been retrieving these craft and potentially retrieving biologicals, but that we were actually have been in contact with them. Now that, for me, came out of left field for me. And obviously, I don't think that's been validated by anyone yet. So, I mean, you can take that with a grain of salt. But it was just strange that a person would come out and make a statement like that and apparently still be connected to the military in some way. So that's something that's still being vetted, but it was the way that 2023 ended. So if I were to look at it all, I saw a lot of great things happen, which we mentioned with Grush and, the historic congressional hearing, the fact that the world was open to listening to a story about Las Vegas ETs just to begin with, right? And then we had the downsides where the Arrow hearing, the NASA hearing, the balloon debacle, let's see, the Klippenstein article, along with other ones where they really tried to, chip at ufology and try to take the story down. So I give it all a grade of a B. I'll give it a B. I'll give it a B because regardless of all the negativity and the things that went wrong, we still, I think we still moved the needle forward for 2023. So we made progression. So thumbs up for that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get in. I have a story here, which is Kirkpatrick speaking lately. And I want to say, okay, I have some audio for this. So let me see if we can share that here. All right, let me try to bring this up. This is from Twitter. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. I think this is it.
Bigelow under the DIA.
Let's take a listen at this real quick.
Kirkpatrick says his investigators ultimately traced this game of top secret telephone back to fewer than a dozen people.
They're some of the same people that worked for Robert Bigelow under the DIA program. They're some of the same people that have been working behind the scenes with Congress to write legislation. They're the same people that worked with a U.S. company and the United States Army to explore a piece of material that they claimed was a UAP, and it really is a piece of missile casing from the 1950s. They're the same people that have been influencing some of these whistleblowers who have come forward to say, hey, I don't have any firsthand evidence, but all these people are telling me this. Here's what I know.
The most public of these whistleblowers is the former Pentagon official, whose voice you heard at the beginning of the show, testifying about crashed alien spacecraft before a U.S. congressional committee.
I was informed of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
So he's one of the individuals that I think this core group of people that have influenced him, have told him this information. He may have misinterpreted things that people have said, or he may have just fallen to the influence of what these folks have been telling him. In either event, at the time I left, he had not come in to speak to Arrow, so I can't say with 100% what he has to say, only what he's put out into the media and what others have come to tell us. So you see what I'm saying? There's this commonality.
What he's saying is actually quite ironic, because the true believer about UFOs thinks that there's a government conspiracy to hide real evidence of aliens. What Kirkpatrick is saying is the actual conspiracy is being carried out by a group of UFO true believers to get the government involved in the business of investigating aliens. I was searching for the right metaphor, but I think this is known as a self-licking ice cream cone.
That is a self-licking ice cream cone, exactly.
The self-licking ice cream cone is a Pentagon term of art for a program that exists only to perpetuate itself.
Okay, all right. So with that being said, that's some statements from Kirkpatrick. Disingenuous, if you ask me. You were head of Arrow for all that time. You had nothing to say, but there's nothing to see here. But then once you leave office, now you have all these things to say all of a sudden. Now, in discrediting Grush. Now, we know that Grush has stated that he's given you this information. I want to say he even said that under oath. So someone's lying here. Someone's lying. Someone's lying. Is it Grush? I don't think that it is. It could be, though. Maybe he's doesn't care about his future and he wants to lie under oath and doesn't care what the consequences are. That could be possible, right? Unlikely. So let's look at some of the reason why Kirkpatrick is disingenuous. So there's one of the prominent skeptics out there. I want to say prominent skeptics, but one of the most visible skeptics, Stephen Greenstreet, what he did was he did an interview with Brandon Fugel from Skinwalker Ranch during the whole New York Post Skinwalker Ranch basement office series that he did last year. Now, during that interview, Brandon Fugel states pretty clearly that in 2018, and this is prior to Kirkpatrick taking the Arrow job, but in 2018, Brandon Fugel was contacted by individuals in D.C., and they wanted to fly him out there to be briefed on what they were stating was I guess activities at the ranch or something along those lines. That's what he states on the basement office episode, and you can go back and watch to verify exactly what he said. But he says when he gets to D.C., he sees some faces that he doesn't recognize, and then some that he does. And he alluded to, and Greenstreet followed up to confirm, and asked him if one of those people was Sean Kirkpatrick, and it was. So in 2018, Sean Kirkpatrick is flying on the taxpayer's dime, flying Brandon Fugel from Skinwalker Ranch to DC to be briefed on the activities and things that are going on there. So it begs me, it for a person to take a stance that they take today, and you hear in these current interviews that how everything's ridiculous and it's not really what it seems, and it's really these delusional people, and he's saying all this. What was his reason for flying Brandon Fugel out to Washington, D.C. on a taxpayer dime in 2018? Why were you there? Why don't we hear about that from you? Why isn't it something that you address? Brandon Fugel says it happens. He says you were in the room when he got to D.C., when he got into this private meeting that was set up, when he was flown out to D.C. You were in the meeting, and would want to know why. You don't believe there's anything to this. You keep saying this over and over again. So if I have to look at, and here's the other part that I have a problem with. You have people, everyone who comes out in ufology, anyone who comes out on the side of UFOs are real, goes through an extensive vetting period by these by skeptics, right? They get put through the ringer. They dig up everything on them, anything that goes against the narrative that what they're saying is true. This has not been done once with any of the people that these skeptics praise. So when you look at it, Kirkpatrick, when you look at anyone who says anything against UFOs is a hero to skeptics. When have they been vetted? When has someone looked into Sean Kirkpatrick's past to see if he lies? I think I just showed you right now an instance where it was shown that he lied. That's a for sure thing. And if he was interested in seeing flying Brandon Fugel out to Washington D.C. to talk about Skinwalker Ranch, then it is probably likely that what Grush stated under oath that he actually presented information to Kirkpatrick, so that is likely to be true. Which would say again that what he's doing right now, what Kirkpatrick is doing right now on this press run that he's doing to try to defame ufology, which once again, if you've walked away, why do you have anything to say? It just shows a lot of disingenuine intent there, and it's funny to me how a lot of the skeptics are clinging on to every word that Kirkpatrick says as being truth, and see, we told you guys, we told you, but you haven't validated anything. You're literally taking a person's word at face value when your advice, coming from a skeptic view, is to you vet David Grush, or to dig into his past or dig into his history so you can show why he's lying or why you shouldn't believe this guy. But you're not doing that with the people that you got. And it's just a double standard, right? And it just makes me know that they don't want to vet these people because they want to be able to still have the position that these things aren't real and that these things are happening. But when you have an experiencer like myself, and I know a lot of you out there who are experiencers that know for sure fact that what's going on is a real thing, and you've seen these things, right? And that's what the next part of the show is, because we're gonna go into proving, and proving is a strong word. We're gonna go into showing that more likely than not, this thing is real, right? And don't get distracted by these comments that Kirkpatrick is making. And I'm talking to skeptics too. Don't get sidetracked. I mean, your part, and let me be clear about this. The skeptical part, of this conversation is so very important and needs to be there. You know what I mean? That's why I back people like my guy Lou, and even Green Street and Mick West. I don't have a problem with it is what they do. We need them in this conversation. We have to have both sides of this, but everyone needs to be open-minded enough to listen to be logical or listen to information that might be pretty much logical. So with that being said, I love the approach, but you guys have to vet your guys, right? I don't take a Grush at a face value. If I heard anything that sounded strange to me, I would question it. You know what I mean? Because I am coming from an open-minded place. But just to slander or just to ride on what Kirkpatrick is saying as fact just sounds insane. It sounds bonkers. It sounds hypocritical. It sounds like a double standard, and it's kind of what it is. Now, Kirkpatrick goes even further. I mean, you can go and find these podcasts that he's done lately and listened to them in their entirety. And I'm not here to cover them in that way, but the other part of what he said is something that we talked about already a few weeks ago, just in general discussion on the late night call-in show. And let me actually bring my graphic back up, because what that was, let's see, actually, we'll get into that in a minute. It was these spheres, right? The spheres. So we found out, we had a listener on with us. I can't recall the listener that pointed this out, but pointed out the fact that, hey, they have these drones, or these drones that they're working on, that actually have these impeller fans on them all around the object, and that it would allow these things to move in more precise manner and maybe change direction, you know, instantaneously or quickly. And it was something that I looked at and I said, you know what, that's actually pretty interesting to know. And it is good to know. I think that information should be there for anyone on either side of the argument, because yeah, if there are some of these things that we're seeing in the sky, sometimes we need to know that so we can kind of cross those things out. But I think these things, you know, would be pretty clear as far as now that you've seen them, and which is another important reason why the UAP report needed to call in shapes, because if they showed these things in the UAP report, then some people could say, oh, okay, maybe I saw something like that, or if I do, then I'll know that that isn't anything that I need to be concerned about, right? So this is why the information, putting the information out is so important, or being transparent is so important. And kind of how we got there is because they were resolving a lot of these cases under Arrow, or at least 3 cases that we went over. They had their case resolution, but they weren't showing how they came to those resolutions, right? They didn't show the work that they did to determine that the videos that we went over were actually resolved, right, as something mundane or explainable. So with that being said, more data is better, but yeah, these spheres and drones, I could accept that they have these things up there. And guess what? Next time I see something, if I do see something up there, I will consider this. And I think everybody else should do the same. But with that being said, they had the and I want to kind of go over this real quick. They had the story by the Liberation Times, Christopher Sharp. Shout out to Christopher Sharp. But I kind of want to make sure that we cover that, because I think it kind of speaks to a lot of the things that I'm talking about now. And, you know, it's a pretty good take on it. So let me go ahead and bring this up, and I'm going to actually go over this right now. So, all right. So, Liberation Times, this article has been written by Christopher Sharp. Former UFO office director's opinion draws scrutiny on impartiality and investigation handling. A recent opinion article written by, which is, in prefaces, that's the audio that we just heard, essentially, were a lot of the points that he covered in this opinion article. So, here we go. So, a recent opinion article written by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the former director of the U.S. government's Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, or UAP office, known as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARROW, has prompted concerns regarding the impartiality and handling of the office under his leadership. In the article published by Scientific American, Dr. Kirkpatrick took swipes at whistleblowers under threat from reprisals and current members of Congress currently investigating UAP. Dr. Kirkpatrick, referring to former senior intelligence official and UAP whistleblower David Grush, wrote, "Our efforts were ultimately overwhelmed by sensational but unsupported claims that ignored contradictory evidence, yet captured the attention of policymakers and the public, driving legislative battles and dominating the public narrative." Dr. Kirkpatrick, in October 2023, admitted that as director, he has not spoken to Grush about the allegations, casting doubts over his position to know whether they are unsupported. Grush has lodged an official complaint with Thomas Mannheim, the intelligence community's Inspector General, ICIG, addressing UAP programs and the reprisals he endured. The complaint has been recognized as both credible and urgent. That complaint was lodged in May 2022, almost 2 months before the Arrow was stood up. Liberation Times has learned that firsthand witnesses to retrieval and reverse engineering programs relating to non-human materials have supported Grush allegations, and so have other governmental sources, which were not associated with previous UAP programs referenced by Dr. Kirkpatrick in his article. Speaking to Liberation Times, Grush confirmed that he did decide to approach Arrow staff, but held reservations regarding the way information was handled. And I guess this is a quote here. On request of a senator in late October 2023, I have been in communication via email with Arrow staff and have been willing to work on an interview arrangement. Quote, Arrow staff have been unwilling to address in writing the specific handling of classified compartmented information, such as the CIA Directorate of Operations, compartmented data on human sources and non-UAP related but adjacent compartmented programs. Quote, I take my obligations to protect sources and methods extremely seriously. Earlier this month, members of the House Oversight Committee met with Mannheim to discuss the ICIG's investigation relating to Grush's allegations. Those who attended did not leave the meeting feeling like Grush's claims were not supported. Representative Moskowitz stated on X, based on what we heard, many of Grush's claims have merit. Dr. Kirkpatrick, in his article, seemed to discourage members of Congress from investigating such whistleblower allegations, writing, quote, the result of this whirlwind of tall tales and fabrication and secondhand or third-hand retellings of the same was a social media frenzy and a significant amount of congressional and executive time and energy spent on investigating these so-called claims as if we didn't have anything better to do. That's his quote. This comes after key mechanisms for the disclosure of UAP-related information and materials were removed from the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Disclosure Act of 2023, or UAPDA, proposed by Senate Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds following alleged hostility from senior Republicans, including House Intelligence Chair Mike Turner. Dr. Kirkpatrick has again and again underlined the importance of evidence. However, by seemingly discouraging investigations by Congress and the executive branch and following the hollowing of the UAPDA, producing evidence becomes almost impossible. Speaking with the Liberation Times, Lester Nair, the founder of the UAP Caucus, a group dedicated to raising UAP awareness and advocating for action among congressional members, commented, it's ironic the Department of Defense, often accused of hiding UAP information, now through Dr. Kirkpatrick, is actively discouraging Congress from finding evidence and potential whistleblowers from coming forward. History reminds us, as with the church committee, that a thorough, transparent investigation is imperative now more than ever. It is not clear whether Dr. Kirkpatrick provided his article to the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review, DOPSR. The Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review website states, Department of Defense employees and military service members have a lifelong responsibility to submit for pre-publication review any information intended for public disclosure that is or may be based on protected information gained while associated with the department. Dr. Kirkpatrick's article touched upon aspects relating to the Arrow's upcoming Historical Record Report Volume 1, yet to be submitted, which may cause complications regarding the DOPSR process. Commenting on the lack of clarity on whether the article submitted to DOPSR, one defense source speaking under condition of anonymity told Liberation Times, this is troubling for two reasons. If Dr. Kirkpatrick did not have it reviewed, it is a serious breach of standing Department of Defense policy, and could result in another inspector general complaint against the department. And this is another quote. On the other hand, if he did have it reviewed and they approved it, this is also problematic because in his article, he provides a summary of the results of a study for Congress and the Department of Defense that has not been completed yet or provided to the U.S. government. Quote, again, one then must ask questions: who gave him authority to release the results of a report before they were even provided to Congress? And if the study is ongoing, where is the analysis? Right? I asked about that as well. If he is biased, why is he still being used by the Department of Defense as an, quote, unpaid consultant to advise the Deputy's Secretary of Defense? So, you know, this is definitely, let me see, there's only a little bit left, so I'll continue with this. Dr. Kirkpatrick also wrote that none of his whistleblowers within the public eye had ever approached the Arrow to provide evidence in a statement for the record. Quote, as of the time of my departure, none, let me repeat, none of the conspiracy-minded whistleblowers in the public eye had elected to come to Arrow to provide their evidence and statement for the record despite numerous invitations. Liberation Times understands that this is inaccurate. One whistleblower in contact with Liberation Times has asserted that they did speak to Dr. Kirkpatrick and his team on record, and they were aware of several other whistleblowers who did the same. It is understood that Arrow was provided with statements and specific data. Multiple U.S. intelligence and defense sources have previously confirmed to Liberation Times that the Arrow, as one source stated, has, quote, coordinated the collection and analysis of materials from an unknown origin. Following the article's publication, Travis Taylor, the former chief scientist for the U.S. government's UAP task force, told Dr. Kirkpatrick online, quote, in order to find substantiating evidence, you have to actually look. Arrow was a farce to shovel the manure back into the manufacturer, and the public doesn't realize it. This is Travis Taylor. A former government official familiar with Dr. Kirkpatrick informed Liberation Times that he was not trusted among other whistleblowers. The official, speaking under condition of anonymity, commented, now we see why whistleblowers didn't trust Kirkpatrick. It will be very difficult for the Department of Defense to regain faith and trust with new whistleblowers given the behavior and deceitfulness of Kirkpatrick. His article appears to be written from the perspective of someone who failed at their job and is now throwing a child's fit of rage. Another source who knows Dr. Kirkpatrick pondered how someone who recently published an article about the possibility of alien motherships orbiting our planet could now take the stance that it's all hogwash unless there is a hidden agenda that Dr. Kirkpatrick is engaged in. This month, the U.S. Department of Defense, or DoD, confirmed to Liberation Times that Dr. Kirkpatrick, since his departure, continues to serve the Arrow as an unpaid consultant. Liberation Times has asked the DoD if it will continue to utilize Dr. Kirkpatrick in this capacity following the publication of his recent article, whether it was submitted to DOPSR. So awesome reporting by Liberation Times. Shout out to Chris Sharp for staying on top of this, man, because here's the thing. I think a lot of the stuff they said about Kirkpatrick is the obvious, right? We know that he's being disingenuous. We know from reports that people have tried to come to him with information, and the last statement was right. I mean, so the last quote in this article just says it all. It says, now we see why whistleblowers didn't trust Kirkpatrick. And that just makes total sense. If you listen to a man that speaks like this, is this the person that you expect to get any results from, right? And he's taking this stance. And then the other point that he had the article about the alien motherships, that's kind of strange, right? But then that even more validates the fact that he in 2018 flew Brandon Fugel out to Washington, D.C. on the taxpayer dime to discuss Skinwalker Ranch. So I think Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick needs to be looked into. So, and maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll take a look. I don't know how much information we can dig up on him, but it appears he's being disingenuous at best. And so nothing burger as far as taking any validation or getting any validation in what it is that he's saying. But skeptics, though, if you go look at the skeptics, they are celebrating, they're high-fiving this new stance by, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. But you're quick to look at Grush and call him unstable or this or that. You don't have any evidence of anything on David Grush except for the Klippenstein report, and you guys are like dogging this guy. But then you're high-fiving for Sean Kirkpatrick, who's been caught in multiple lies, and then taking what he says at face value. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. I'm done with that. And we are going to get out of the news because I could go all day on shit. It's just, anytime Kirkpatrick spoke in 2023, as we shown earlier, it was never anything but negativity and truthfully anything but lies. And I'm totally glad that he has stepped down from that position. He did not need to be in that position. And I hope he gets, the lies are uncovered and he has to face, that because, this whistleblower amendment was set up to have a safe space for whistleblowers to come in and tell what it is they needed to tell. But when you have someone like this that you have to go in and see, what's the likelihood that you go and do that? Or what's the, someone that is going to end up making it hard for you first to tell the story, and then secondly, want to discredit you on the back end and say that, you were just influenced by a bunch of kooks, which is essentially what he just did to David Grush. So, yeah, I got pretty heated about that when I heard that, and obviously it's coming through, so I'm going to go ahead and get off of that. We're going to get into proving, or not, like I said, we're going to take that back, not proving, but showing why more likely than not these things are here, and then just kind of talking about why are they here, if we can even think about that. We can wrap our mind around that. That's what we're going to do here. So let's go ahead and get out of the news, and then we'll be right back with the main topic here. So let's go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into why are extraterrestrials here, theories. Now, we do have a segment on the show, or I guess we'll call it a segment, where we end up having the chat kind of chime in. It's called
Ask the Chat.
Ask the Chat. So there's Ask the Chat questions. You'll hear this occasionally throughout the show. And the question would be, are we still on track for confirmation? So I know I went ahead with the news and kind of went in about that. Let me go ahead and go back into the chat real quick just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. It's a little different format today. So welcome to the show, Lex Diaz, Kurt M, D-Worm, Flat Six, let's see, Magneticus, John P. Adventures, Christine, let's see. Let's keep going. Bigfoot, Littlefoot, Stargazer. Definitely want to thank you for coming on in here. Appreciate you. And yeah, so Kirkpatrick, Kurt M says Kirkpatrick may be unpaid consultant, but I'm sure his super PAC gets plenty of donations, of course. Let's see. Stargazer makes a great point. Anybody in the military suffers from depression. That's all they got on David Grush. That's all they have, right? But they're looking, and that's my problem, is you're looking so hard for deficiencies in the whistleblower, but on the other side, you guys aren't. So essentially, they're blame. So what skeptics like to do is they like to look at non-skeptics, I'll say, people who believe in UFOs, that say, oh, you guys just listen to any story, you guys just believe any story. That's essentially what they're doing on the skeptic side. So as long as somebody comes along and says, oh, UFOs aren't real, here's why, then skeptics are like, see, he says UFOs aren't real. So what are we doing here, right? Without vetting these guys or looking into, they could just be saying that. We know they're just saying that. But it's just so funny. It's the double standard that the skeptics will sit there and complain about how we supposedly just take the word of people that say UFOs are real, even though we've seen them ourselves in most cases. And then you just have these, anybody who speaks on the side of these skeptics, and they don't believe. That's the problem. And I did a show about this skeptic versus non-skeptic logic from last season. You should watch it because it covers exactly this, the mindset of these skeptics. That I say, skeptics say, you guys are believers. But I believe the skeptics believe in not believing, right? So they're believers also. They just believe in not believing. And it's apparent when you have somebody like Kirkpatrick that comes out and makes a statement like, hey, UFOs aren't real, we haven't found any evidence. And the skeptics are like, see, high five, they didn't find anything. Come on, case closed, guys. Ridiculous. So asking the chat, are we still on track for confirmation? 2024 just started. I still say it ended on a great note. I feel like, yes, we're still on track for this. I don't think really there's anything that can be done to stop it. I just hope that this year I just hope that this year there's more tangible evidence presented, right? We could have the conversation. We could say we saw this, or Roscoe could say they built this huge ship that they had to build the building around. But now let's start getting into where is that building at? Like, let's start hinting around towards that and kind of moving the conversation forward, right? I hope we can do that. So Christine says, I'm a big time skeptic in general. So for me to believe in UFOs says a lot for me personally. And that's exactly what I'm saying. And it's not even believing it's right. It's just you're open-minded enough to have the conversation, and depending on the evidence says, oh, okay, this sounds logical, or nah, I don't know about that, right? So you have the option of going either way, which is the same for me, but I've seen something. So I know, like, at the end of the day, you can't tell me that things aren't there because I've seen them, right? I haven't seen beings specifically, but I've seen craft that disappeared into thin air on a clear blue day with no clouds in the sky. I've seen that. So I know there's something to that. Now, if you can show me government tech where they have something that just could disappear in the clear blue sky, then okay, then you maybe have me moving over a little bit. But as it stands right now, there's nothing that I see that's going to kind of do that, right? So with that being said, let me go ahead and get into this. So we're going full steam. I think other countries are going to accuse of reverse alien tech. It's going to end up being an issue if the Geneva Rules of Engagement, nobody knows the effect of this tech. Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? But here's, with the government always Johnny on the spot, for most UFO crash retrievals, stepping over country lines and being able to just go retrieve the crash retrieval from over their borders, lets you know the type of influence the U.S. has over pretty much most countries out there. So, I've always thought, okay, maybe one of these other countries steps forward and says, hey, we have the craft. And there's been a couple cases where we talked to on After Hours to Susie Hansen, and she was talking about how the MOD had released their UFO files in 2009, 2010 roughly. So there's been times where other countries have tried to step forward and say, here's the evidence. We're going to release this evidence. So they've tried to do that. But, it doesn't get the attention that it should get. So unless it's a China or a Russia or a country that's right up there with us, it's just not going to be effective from that angle. So with that being said, let me see. Yeah, we can get into that too, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into this here because we have ET. Why are they here? And I just have a few examples, right, to kind of go over. I mean, just there's like, if I would love for not just people who are non-skeptics to be watching and engaging in this, but I would also love for the skeptics to, let's try to make sense of this and figure out why they are here, and let's kind of point out, let's kind of show that they are here actually first. Then we ask the question, why are they here? And we'll kind of get to that in a minute here. But just starting out, so one thing, so why do we know that they're here? Let's start there. So we know that they're here because we have seen them in our skies. We have seen UFOs in our skies. So this happens daily, right? But with these categories that we're about to go through, what I want to do is kind of just point out and briefly discuss, like, the ones that you could take to the bank, the ones that you could, because you can't be 100% without the video or the photo evidence. In some cases, this isn't there, but we have witness testimony in a lot of these cases, and we have multiple witnesses, and it'd be kind of hard to debunk any of these or question any of these. So we can show that UFOs are in our skies, right? Couple ways we can do that. Just a couple of my favorite examples is what I pulled. One of them that you can't really deny, they have a picture of it, it's pretty old. This sighting is pretty old. Would be the Phoenix lights. I don't care how many times you try to explain or write this off as flares. You know, we have a friend of the show, Tom King, who filmed these lights, who's famous for being one of the people who actually filmed these lights. If you've seen the footage from Phoenix Lights, you've probably viewed his footage. He's been on this show before, and he will tell you that these were not flares. He was there that day. He will tell you that these were not flares. So many people saw these things in the sky. It was what should have been, and I'll use his term a lot, one of those land on the White House moments that people ask for. Like, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Okay, this is one of those times where you almost can't deny this. Okay, so this is an example of, we've seen them in the air, not just one person, but a multitude of people at once seeing these things in the air. Okay, so we have that. We're going to go back even older than that. We're going to go back even further than that, and we'll be jumping into the Battle of LA, right? Which is one of my, I mean, and here's, you can't really get in too close to it, obviously. Let me see what I can do. But one of the things, and I had questions about this, and I talked to some people along the way, because I was under the impression that the image that you see up top there was like a recreation. It was like someone kind of recreated what the scene looked like. However, I was brought to understand that no, that's the actual camera, the actual picture of the event. So with that being said, you don't kind of mistake something like, especially back at that time. We're talking about, this is 1942. We had only been in the air for maybe 30 years at that point, a little over 30, 40 years, right? That we've been actually have the ability to fly anything, right? So to be able to not understand what you're seeing in the sky, being that there weren't many examples of, there weren't many variations of what planes were. I'll say that. So back in 1942, a plane only took a certain form, a certain shape. So you understood what a plane was. You understood there were only a handful of them in existence at the time. So I don't think there's a way that you mistake that. So with that being said, these are a couple of, and I'm sure there's more we could talk about that are examples of times where something was seen in the sky that was undeniable, right? So we go from there. So we understand, yes, they are in our skies. We have almost essentially proof of that, right? So we can move on to UFOs under the ocean. So we know they're in the sky. We have examples of that where multiple people have seen them in the skies. And then now we have under our ocean, because the ocean obviously is only 5% explored. So there's 95% of the ocean that has not been even explored, which is insane. Then there's not going to be a lot of sightings that we could say were like mass sightings where something came out of the water, because it's just a place that we're not there. I'm sure these things happen all the time way off coast somewhere where there just aren't when they're away from shipping lanes and they're away from where the islands are and they're just in the open ocean. I'm sure these things are coming in and out the water. We don't have any proof of that, but what we do have proof of is the David Fravor statement made where he stated that when they saw this tic tac, they could see something under the water. They could see something under the water that might have been, I guess, communicating with this tic tac. There is another time that David Fravor talks about someone in the military that came to him and said, you something along the lines like, yeah, I saw something crazy myself. And then goes into telling him a story about how he was, I think a CH-53, one of those transport helicopters that have the thing where they can lift and carry things. So there's these drones, and I did a show about this. There's these drones that they kind of test, and then they go and pick them up out of the water. They send a diver in. The diver connects the hook onto it, and then the helicopter lifts it up out the water. Well, this person who came to tell Fravor the story tells him that the diver went in, and he's looking down at the diver, and the diver's connecting the hook to the drone, and all of a sudden the person telling the story says he sees this dark mass come up from the bottom of the water and is rising up to the top. And so he just calls it and pulls the diver back up. And as he does that, this huge drone that they're trying to get out the water gets sucked down, never to be seen again. So that incident, and that's a pretty credible story, right? But go even further, you have the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico video, which we've all seen, of an anomalous object that still no one can describe or explain what it is, as far as the skeptics to try to debunk this. We've seen this object go into the water. We've seen it fly through the air. And this is military footage, right? So you can almost this is the standard for these government, the people looking into this in the government, right? These arrows and these other agencies that are looking into this. This is from government cameras that show that this object did definitely fly across. It went under the water, split into two, came out of the water, and continued to go. That is probably something you could almost, until they show some tech that we have that is able to do this, then it doesn't exist. So a lot of people like to say, oh yeah, they're developing that with these contractors. We're 50 years ahead of where we think we are. And well, you got to prove that. So it should be provable. If we have that tech, you should be able to bring it out to show that we do have that tech. So until then, until that day, we don't have that tech. So until the day that you can bring that tech out and show the world, then we don't have that tech and we don't have the ability, which leaves this as probably something that isn't from here. So this is, I think this, and then let's see, we have also the jellyfish UAP, which is the new one. Now, this is reported to go into the water for 17 minutes, come back out and shoot off. We haven't seen that video yet, but I will say if that video does exist and we end up seeing that here in 2024, then I think that will be another, and also taken with government cameras. So, you know, even though any camera should suffice, the standard is it needs to come from one of these high-tech cameras. So we'll go with that. But I think if the video comes out of this coming or going into the water and then coming out and shooting off, then it's just another one you could take to the bank that shows that these things are not only in the sky, but they are going into the water for whatever reason. And we can speculate on what that is, and we will a little in a little bit here. But I think when you look at these options that we're showing, that even if you're a skeptic, you have to really, you're going to have to try pretty hard to show that these things aren't valid, right? So that's going to be UFOs under the ocean. Under the ocean. So we got sky covered, we got the ocean covered with some good examples. Now, this is the one that most people should be concerned about. That is UFOs on the ground. And to put this into perspective, with the ocean, I just talked about, most people know that only 5% of the ocean has been explored by mankind. So there's 95% where we just don't know what the hell is in there. And then if you look at land, we have pretty much covered a lot of the land. And I think there's somewhere around, I think they said like 10-15% of the Earth's land surface that we don't frequent or we haven't been able to get to. And we'll kind of go into that, because when you look at those two things total, when you talk about ocean and land, the Earth in total, this is kind of mind blowing right here. The Earth in total, land and water combined, there is, I want to say 65% of this planet that we have not explored as human beings, including parts of land and then pretty much all of the ocean. So on a one planet, so to sit here, and this is to you skeptics. So for skeptics and a lot of the other people to sit here and say that there's just no chance that these things are happening, guys, we have only explored 35% of this planet. There's more than 50%. There's more than 50% of this planet that we have not been able to explore, most of that being in the ocean. So you tell me, does it sound too far off for there to be things that we just haven't seen or that we don't see often because we haven't explored 65% of this planet? Think about that. Think about that. But then looking at the ground options, right? We have the most compelling examples on the ground. We know they're in the sky. We showed examples. We know they go in the water, which most likely means that if with the video that we've captured along coastlines of them going in the water, we pretty almost sure 1,000 miles out into the ocean, they're going into the water. And I don't think that's questionable. But on land, as you can see right here, this is aerial school, or let's start with the aerial school. This is aerial school. And I don't think you can deny what happened there, right? So you had the kids on camera right after the event happened. They all draw similar ships. They separate them. They have them all draw what they remember the ships to look like. And they all draw the same thing. I don't think you can discount that sighting of an account of UFO lands on the ground. That happened. That happened, right? Too many people, too many witnesses to that, too many witnesses. So We know they're in the air. We know they're underwater. We know that they're on land. Another example, as you just saw, is Virginia, Brazil. I'm totally bought into that story, right? You have the three girls. You have the mother who comes back to the scene and mentions the smell of the ETs, which a lot of people in other uh, encounters with ET have said the same thing about this being the sulfur smell. So there, and I'm someone that says that we should lean back on our own history of what we already have gathered as humanity to be able to validate some of the things that come up. And common sense rules a lot of the time. So we know that the sulfur thing has been said before. This lady in Virginia, Brazil doesn't know to say that. I mean, she could potentially, but it's unlikely that that would be the thing that she thought to say about that situation, right? So with that being said, it's, I can pretty much, I'd give that 80%, and it's probably higher than that. But I think it's undeniable still. Then you get into, I know there are a couple I don't have slides for, like the Lonnie Zamora case, right? Which is broad daylight, even though he's just one person. But they pretty much have the evidence on the ground of something being there, and then some of the things being burnt right after he reported these things. And someone else across town saw a similar shaped object. It was like an egg shaped object later on that day as well. So Zamora goes, guess he's trying to pull someone over for speeding, ends up hearing this explosion, lets the speeder go, goes to check to see what this explosion was, drives kind of off road, ends up seeing this craft on the ground. When he gets a little closer, he's able to see that there's two beings sitting outside of the craft, that one of them turns and looks at him. And when he tries to get a closer look, the beings, I guess at that point, have gotten back into the craft. He says the craft lifts up off the ground with fire and then kind of just shoots off across the sky. They had evidence of that. They went and took pictures the same day. So you also have Rendlesham Forest, which we've all heard of this one. Now, beings weren't seen in this, but craft was. So craft was. They even touched the craft. They talked about, and these are military guys, they talked about the inscriptions that were on the craft, right? So many cases of these things actually being on the ground. So these are the same things that are in the sky, the same things that are underwater are also being seen on ground. And in some of these cases, they have things that are getting out of these craft, right? Like the aerial school. We also have, and this is aerial school right here, and if you've ever seen that video, I would love to interview this lady here. If anybody has her link or social media, I'm going to look for it, but I would love to interview this lady and talk to her about it, because I'll tell you what, if there wasn't any other child in that video who came across as believable, it was definitely her. There definitely were others. They all seemed believable to me. Just the shock and you could see it in their faces, right? So confirmation essentially that these things are actually not only touching the ground or landing on the ground, but things are getting out and they're walking around, right? It's crazy. It's crazy, I know, to think of it, but this is the reality, right? This is our reality. So we also have the Westall, which is another one of my favorite ones, because once again, it's at a school, and so many people saw this at one time, again, in broad daylight. And then it left a mark in the grass, what they call the grange, that was spiral, a spiral mark in the grass. So another time where evidence was left, even though all these witnesses saw it, which should be enough, there was also some evidence left behind as well. Too many different situations. So when you think about this, and I think that's the last slide I have for that. When you think about that, skeptics, talking to you more specifically, when you look at this, how can you prove any of this? How can you discount it, right? These are too many examples. Now, I'm sure you could probably find something to say because we know, even though I shout out Mick West, Mick West will probably say, yeah, that it was from a dust devil. Dust devil can create these swirls, and then you can try to make up so many different reasons why. But we have witness accounts, which I think are pretty much the important part of all these are just witness accounts, many witnesses at that at one time. So I can make up, you know, I could make up why the sun burns hot every day, right? I could literally make something up on the reason why the sun burns hot. Doesn't mean that it's true, but unless you can test it at that moment, then it could be, plausible. Unless if you didn't know the real answer on why the sun burns every day, you could literally make up anything. And that's kind of what debunkers are able to do because you can't go back and retest it in the moment, right? So they can make up anything. They can make up anything under the sun, and what they're making up can't be tested. But I will say that there are a few of these examples, like the people. I think some of these things. So, for instance, we did the news story earlier about Kirkpatrick saying that these metallic spheres are these drones. Well, we know these drones are actual real things. We could take these drones in the field and test them to see if they can perform in the way that these metallic spheres are doing, right? That should be able to be done and settled right then and there. So we should be able to take one of these drones they have. They should be able to zip off at high speed. They should be able to make right angle turns on the drop of a dime. They should be able to do these things because you're trying to say that these orb sightings or these metallic sphere sightings are actually mistaken and that they're actually these drones. So you should be able to mimic the performance of what people are reporting. You should be able to mimic using these drones. You should be able to do that tomorrow. You should be able to set up a day tomorrow, get cameras out there and show the world, Sean Kirkpatrick, and maybe you should do this, right? You should be able to show the world that these drones that you're talking about, that you're saying are what we're seeing in calling metallic spheres, you should be able to show the performance on that, man. And I doubt that you'll do it because we know they're not the same thing. But it's compelling to at least think about those spheres being mistaken, in maybe some sightings. But, oh boy, don't get me started on Kirkpatrick. Okay, so with that being said, I think we kind of pretty much laid a good groundwork, right? Because we had Lonnie Zamora, as far as on the ground, Lonnie Zamora, we had Reynolds Forest, we had the Virginia, Brazil, we had the Aerial School, we had the Westall School. These are all solid 5 instances where I think we can pretty much show that these things have landed on the ground. Now, there's theories out there, and we can kind of go into more of the why are they here, which some people think that they are here because that they're from the future or from other dimensions. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think you can say either way, but it's fun to speculate on why they may be here. My theory is that if they could just step through a portal, and maybe some of them are, because like, for instance, the jellyfish UAP does not seem like a ship. It seems like more something organic or something that is potentially alive. The Agua Dia Puerto Rico one is, to me, kind of feels the same way, sort of organic. So maybe the ones that seem organic step through these portals, and what you're seeing is not a vessel, or as far as a ship goes, but maybe you're seeing the actual entity itself that has stepped through. The jellyfish UAP is just too strange to me. It doesn't make sense how it could be considered a craft, but maybe it is, but it seems more like something that's alive to me. For whatever reason, it just does. And like I stated again, the Agua Dia Puerto Rico one, same thing. Even my sighting, the things that I saw seem more alive than them being vessels. But then you have ones that are specifically vessels. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's why I feel like maybe the dimensional thing could be a thing. Time traveling, I'm still on the fence about that one. I don't see how that fits in or where that would fit in. Because as far as is you understand, is we've been led to understand, which could be wrong, obviously, is that in order to be able to go back in time, you can only go back in time as far as the time machine. The time machine would basically need to be built at this point in order for you to go back to this time. You can't go back to a time prior to when the time machine was available or built, right? That's what they state. And there's a prominent scientist right now. He's an African American gentleman. I can't remember his name, but I know it's been his work, his life work, to build the time machine. And his whole theory is that he won't be able to go back in time himself, but from the moment that it's built, someone will be able to at least go back into time that far. So if that's the theory and that's the case, then I think it's probably unlikely that these things are from the future, unless we have one of these time machines sitting around somewhere that we don't know about, that someone's developed. There is one in existence. We just have no clue who has done this. But as far as that theory goes, if the theory is correct, then it states that it couldn't be time travel. So we'll do that. It's all speculation because I don't think anyone knows the answer to any of that right now, unless you have the time machine. But I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. So with that being said, some of the reasons why they might be here, right? So are they here to test our nukes? Let's look at that. So you have Maelstrom, right? They shut them off. Then you had an incident in Russia where they turned them on. A lot of people feel like, okay, they're here to protect us from nuclear war. They're here to stop nuclear war. They're here to tell us to get rid of our nukes. Okay, we can look at it that way because they turned them off in a situation, but why would they turn them on? You know what I mean? So if they wanted to get rid of nuclear weapons, why would they turn them on? That's the question I would have when it comes to that theory of they're here to stop us from killing each other. And I'll look into the comments here because let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, with that being said, they turn them on, they turn them off, right? So I don't see anything in that that leads me to believe that they're trying to. And let's put it on top of that. We know that they've been here since before the atom bomb was created. However, they allowed us to drop the atom bomb, right? They were here already. And they allowed us to bomb Japan twice. So if they didn't intervene then, what do you think? They just didn't know that we had these devices? It appears they're able to sniff these things out essentially because they show up at nuclear reactors. They show up at nuclear ships. They show up at missile silos where we're holding nuclear weapons. They've even tested, I heard a person say that they had some nuclear material, I'm thinking like some spent rods or something like that, that they had under watch in a box in the middle of the desert, and they were using it as bait to see if it lured them in, and apparently it did, right? So they have some ability to detect the radiation, I would assume, or the plutonium or whatever's being used in these nuclear bombs. They have the ability to detect this material, right? So if that was the case, they were here before World War II, then why would they allow those two bombs to be dropped? So that makes me feel like maybe they're not here to stop that from happening, right? So then why else could they be here? So Are they here potentially because they want our resources, right? They're in the water all the time. Water is the building block of life for us, at least, period. Anything we know on this planet, uh, essentially that's alive needs water to live. So are they here for that resource, being that this planet is 70% water? Um, it's tough to say, but it's definitely something we could talk about or think about. Um, then the flip side to that would be, though, you know, is there some sort of plan for them to relieve us of the access to this planet? Like, one of my theories have been, and it's simply a theory, that with the nuclear weapons that we have, that they're not so much here and showing up at these sites to tell us to stop us from ending each other, but I think it's actually more, and it's just one of the ideas. I feel like it's very possible that the reason why they are showing up at all these nuclear sites is because they don't want any of that out there in space. Like, they don't want any of what we're doing here to leak out from this planet and get into. So they don't want us to be space traveling at this moment because we are weaponized and we have these nuclear weapons. And just think if you were to launch a nuclear missile that just ended up going out into space, right? It's going to keep going until it stops somewhere, until it runs into something. So you could theoretically poison another planet right here from Earth without ever leaving by sending something up there. One thing that kind of backs that up is, if you recall, the missile test. It was a nuclear missile test here in California, and the photographer, they positioned themselves, I want to say, like 5 miles away from the missile being launched, and they were able to track it on camera, the full trajectory of the missile. And what they saw a UFO come in with a laser and shoot it, get on this side, shoot it, get on this side and shoot it, and then it fell back into orbit. If you remember that be an example of them not allowing us to send anything out there that they considered to be a weapon. That's just a theory, but it does make sense, right? So, and then one of the other things, so we can end it with this, because when we ask why are they here, I think it all comes back to me, to the thing that I was talking about the other day, which is about how the media and everyone is turning to this thing being something spiritual. Why are they saying spiritual? Why are they saying somber? And I think I have a video clip of the somber statement here that I wanted to show. That was on, I bookmarked this on Twitter. And I think it's just kind of pressing. It's, let me see. Yeah, this is pretty short. So I just want to make sure that we play this. And I think this is where it kind of hits home. So let's listen to this real quick.
The simple fact is that if the American government chooses to classify what essentially is alleged to be an illegal criminal cover-up, it doesn't look good for the Constitution of the United States that they've chosen to do that. And I guess I just don't believe that the Congress would allow that to happen. I mean, there are too many people now in the Congress who are aware of the full story. And believe me, the full story is pretty bloody horrific. When Lou uses words like somber, he uses it for a reason. What's been going on is a disgrace. And, I wish I could talk more specifically about it. And I feel frustrated as a journalist that I just can't go, blang, this is what I know.
So that's a big statement. And shout out to that UFO podcast. Want to give a shout out because we just used your clip from Twitter. But I think that statement, right? That's the statement that keeps me hung up on this spiritual part of it, and why those in the media, Ross Coulthard included, are shifting the conversation from just what we went over, just things being in the sky, to going so far deeper into these things being spiritual. Like, where does that come from? And then with the somber intonation, right? So why is it spiritual and somber at the same time? How do those two things tie into each other? There's a lot of people out there, that don't like to look at this in a negative light, right? They just refuse to. They will be offended if you say that these things are here for anything other than love and light. There are some people that just will turn off the channel, plug their ears when you mention the possibility of these things not being here for the best of reasons. And, what I think is that just a theory here, that it's when you look at how many planets out there are potentially habitable, and then how many are Earth-like, and there's a huge number of them that end up being the result of that. Would they focus so much effort on one planet alone? Like, would they come here to save one planet alone? What would be the likelihood, that they pick Earth to save? You know what I mean? There's so many other potentially habitable, potentially, intelligent life forms out there, that would the mission really be to save those people? It's hard to say. You know what I mean? It's hard to say without any evidence, but I just think the end result is that everyone should be prepared. I think everyone should be prepared, regardless of what the actual outcome is and why they are here. I hope that they're here for love and light. That would be great. We need some of that here on this planet. But at the same time, if they're not here for that, then you need to be able to know how to protect your family. Excuse me. So it's going to be, for those, and I'll say it like this. I used to look at preppers, right? Like, these dudes are wild. None of that stuff will ever happen. No, the economic collapse, all these reasons they used to give for wanting to be prepared. And I kind of figured out down the line that you don't really need any reason to be prepared. It's just better to be prepared than to not. Bottom line, right? So hoping, love, and light, but preparing for doom and darkness is the best way to go, because it's an unknown. We don't have any examples of this to be able to, on other planets that may have experienced this, to say this is the likely outcome. We don't have any of that. So I think we just need to prepare for both sides, and that's how it should go. So with that being said, we have a session that we get into, and we're going to get into this one tonight, which is a segment called Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And we're going to kind of go ahead and get into that. So Once Upon a Time in Ufology, here we go. Right. Once Upon a Time in Ufology, and what we're going to cover today is the UFOs over DC, right? So Once Upon a Time in Ufology is a segment where we like to go back and look at the history, right? There's a lot of things that we have in our history that we should be looking at, and it's important because we have a lot of new people coming into ufology that may know nothing about this particular incident. They may have just come in 2017. They may know Tic Tac, and that's it, and going forward. So we like to touch on some of the historical events that have happened in ufology, and that's why we do this segment. So with that being said, the UFOs over DC was a sighting in Washington, D.C. in 1952, commonly referred to as the Washington Flap, marked a significant chapter in UFO history beginning on July 12th and continuing for several successive weekends. Radar operators at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base detected unusual blips on their screens. These mysterious objects were observed maneuvering in ways that defied known aircraft capabilities. Eyewitness accounts further intensified the intrigue as numerous civilians reported seeing strange lights in the sky. The sightings gained widespread attention, prompting the U.S. Air Force to launch on an investigation under Project Blue Book, its UFO research program. During the peak of the sightings on July 19th and 20th, jet interceptors were scrambled to investigate the unidentified objects. Pilots reported visual confirmation of glowing lights, but as they approached, the UFO swiftly outmaneuvered the military aircraft. This elusive behavior only deepened the mystery surrounding these events. Now, the government initially explained these sightings as temperature inversions caused by radar anomalies. However, this explanation did little to satisfy the public's curiosity. The Washington Flap remains one of the most publicized UFO cases in history. Skeptics and believers offer various interpretations. The incident contributed to increased public interest in UFOs and led to more open discussions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. So that is going to be our Once Upon a Time in Ufology, which is UFOs over DC, which actually you could add that to the segment we did earlier about UFOs in the sky. This is another one right here that should be on that list, that is highly publicized. They saw these things on radar. It happened on multiple occasions. They were able to catalog it. And this is also just one that, as far as history goes, is very, very important. So what we're going to do is go ahead and jump out of Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And we're going to jump into our next and final category, which is Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition. So we're jumping out of Once Upon a Time in Ufology. Let me get us into Science Fiction, Science Fact Movie Edition. And the movie that we recommend for this episode is going to be an oldie but goodie. And it is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Let me go ahead and bring that up here. So Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a film directed by Steven Spielberg. The story follows Roy Neary, a lineman who encounters a UFO while investigating a power outage. Subsequently, he becomes obsessed with understanding the mysterious image implanted in his mind. As he seeks answers, government agents pursue a similar quest. The film explores the theme of communication with extraterrestrial beings and the profound impact such as encounters can have on individuals and humanity as a whole. And that is our Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie of the Week. So the reason why we do this segment is because a lot of people, obviously this movie's 50 years old roughly, and a lot of people saw this a while back, but now that we know that these things are real and they're here, they're for surely here and real, that when you go back and watch a movie like this or any of the ones that we present here, and we do a different movie every week on Science Fiction and Science Fact, you go back and rewatch these movies that we recommend through a new lens, then with the understanding that these things are here, then it kind of hits different. It's really a different experience in watching these. So we have these that we end up putting on here every single week, and it's definitely a fun thing to do. So watch this movie this week, and when we come back again on the next episode, we'll have another movie for you. We can talk about that, but let's go ahead and take a look and see, because I wanted to ask the chat this question here. So let me go back a step or two to this question. And as always, we
Ask the chat.
Why do you think extraterrestrials are here? So if you have any comments on that, on why you think extraterrestrials are here, definitely let us know. I'm looking back here, and I'll go back through some of these comments here. So it says, okay, aliens took a different path with their evolution and advancements. This is Stargazer, actually. Let me start over. Stargazer says the aliens took a different path with their evolution and advancements in tech than us. That's why they find our nukes so interesting. And Thanos said it best: humans are virus to the universe. Yeah, I believe what you're saying there, and I think that's why it's probably more so they're trying to keep us here and not let us leave this planet, because they don't want the things that we're doing, and they don't want any of that out there. And I wouldn't want it out there either. I don't think humanity technically is ready to be a spacefaring nation or space traveling nation, because we're not mentally ready for that. We would confront anything that we saw out there likely with conflict, right? And that's not, and we'd probably take our best weapons, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why. And we got Christine saying, Rob, I agree about the somber. It's confusing when we hear positive things, but we also hear the dark. Both are possible to me. And that's all I'm saying, right? I'm not saying because they're saying somber. I don't know why they're saying somber. So I'm not just going to agree that it is somber, but I'm going to say, let's look at both sides and just be prepared for both, right? So Lex Diaz, why don't Ross and Lou just say what they know besides going to jail? Does that mean that our knowledge of what's really going on won't make a difference? And why the big secret? There it is right there, right? They should, I mean, as far as the somber part, I don't think, there shouldn't be, I'm sure there can't be any NDAs tied to the somber part of it, because if you have an idea, and it could just be Ross and Lou speculating. If you tell us why you feel that way, same way we're talking here today, tell us why you feel that way, and then let us see if it makes sense or not. If it does, okay, great, we'll roll with that. But it's if you go to another person who I'll mention was Tucker Carlson, and maybe we'll go over this on the next show. But Tucker Carlson said, I can't remember who he was talking. He might have been talking to Redacted or some other show, but he said he's so scared about the stuff that he knows that he won't even tell his wife, that he's scared to tell his wife. And then the host of the show said he was scared to, when his kids asked him about it, he was scared to tell his kids based on things that they're hearing about the implications behind what it is that's going on here. I don't know if that leads into the thing that I'm talking about with the spirituality and why they keep bringing that up. I don't know if all those things are intertwined. Maybe they are. And I guess we'll find out. So we got Stargazer. If there were good aliens, why are they giving our government tech to make weapons for war? Those triangles are made for one thing, killing millions of people in a single run. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And another angle that I had was, right, if maybe, and this goes off of the Tim Gallaudet statements where he's stating that we're in contact with, our government is in contact with these ETs. So I'm like, okay, if that scenario is true, then maybe they are looking at these nukes. Maybe they told our government 50 years ago, get rid of these nukes, and until you do that, then we won't be able to help you out with this new, free energy that we have and that we want to offer you. We want to show you guys. So because they want to make sure that we wouldn't weaponize, and they're like, get rid of the weapons, and we're like, no, we don't, want to get rid of the weapons, and maybe that's just one thing that is playing out there. So we don't know. But Magneticus, if they wanted a Megadeth, they could have leaked millions of gallons of VX gas back in the day. Yeah, I don't Megadeth. Yeah, I don't know Magneticus. it depends on why they're here. Like they're not going to poison a planet that they want to eventually take, if that's what the thing is. And we don't know. You know what I mean? And like I said, this is just us talking this out because I think it is important that at some point we figure this out. We have to, or at least be prepared for any of these options here. Kurt M says, those people can be all love and light, but I'm not standing on the roof of the Capitol Records building with a welcome sign at all. Because and this will be another show, we'll for sure make it that. The missing 411, they're taking people all the time, and some people are being brought back, but I think possibly some are not. It's possible that some are not being brought back, and I think that's more scary than just being abducted, right? Because you hear abduction experiencers talk about how they were taken and then they were brought back, and then it's like, okay, well, they brought you back, so that's cool. They didn't really hurt you, so that was cool. But what about the people that they don't bring back? And I think that might be the darker side to the whole abduction thing that maybe the government is aware of. That, hey, some of these people, they're just not ever bringing back. That would be pretty scary and pretty somber, and would then you could go down a whole nother rabbit hole as to why they're not bringing you back, right? Another show. So magnetic is my least favorite sounds. Yeah. Oh, that's the inside thing right there. Kurt M, if these aliens can truly manipulate our perception, we have no defense. And I think that's one of the bigger parts of it all, and the reason why they won't just tell us. Because I think if they had the ability to do anything about these things, I think they would have told us about them at some, down, because it's like, okay, we can defend ourselves from, but I think, they don't say it because the very next question, if they have this press conference with the president on the podium and he's saying, yes, these things are here, the first question is going to be, why are they here? And what can we do to protect ourselves? And they might know the answer to number one, but to protecting ourselves, they're going to have to say, we can't protect you. And they don't want to do that. And I don't blame them, because I wouldn't want to hear that. Because if I hear that who the entity that's supposed to be the most powerful entity in the world can't even help us, then now we got to figure out a way to protect ourselves, right? Now we have to kind of start from scratch on figuring out what the best way to protect ourselves is. So better to be prepared than not. Stargazer, they said craft were doing 7,200 miles an hour on radar, right? And so that's the funny thing, because when a lot of these skeptics get to high-fiving on Kirkpatrick's statements, and these skeptics can't go back and explain any of these things, like the things we covered on the show today. They can't explain those things away, and they can't explain 7,200 miles an hour on radar. They can't explain anything prior to the more advanced technological age that we're in now, so maybe 80 and earlier. They can't really explain those things. They always just brush those things off, if you notice, because they want the drone explanation. They want, and those things could only be possible in the current technological age that we're in. Lex Diaz, that's the reason for the big secret. We have no defense. Aliens don't care about us too much. They see us like part of Earth's wildlife, and that could be the case too. And not only that, but I think they see life everywhere they go. And that's the thing where people like we're so special. I'm like, I don't know if that's the case, because if we were space traveling in that capacity where we're able to go all over the universe and see all these planets with life, one planet next to the next is gonna be like, oh, okay, life, cool. You know what I mean? You're not gonna be like, oh, this life is so special, we need to make sure that this life thrives and continues to grow and do its thing. when there's literally a billion other planets that you're going to have to visit? And if that was the mindset, then you're going to be trying to save a billion planets worth of inhabitants. And that's where it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just using common sense, right? So, moving on, let's see. Okay, so yeah, the science fiction, science fact movie was filmed in Mobile, Alabama, close encounters of the third kind. But if you look at that movie is so accurate, it's crazy. It doesn't even make sense. Let's see. Let's see. You know, they try to think we destroy the world, and that's another angle I've thought about. That ETs they won't pull the trigger on us because they know that most of these nations will just hit the button. And not only in the ET aspect, but I think if you left up this, and this goes into the disclosure path that we're on, you know, we talk about how the powers that be don't really want disclosure to come in because it means that they lose power, they lose their position, their status. I think that's a widely thought of idea of the reason why they haven't released the information. And because of that, I feel like there are countries that are unstable enough, and really like more the communist countries that rule by fear and things of that narrative, that if those people are in a situation where disclosure, they know disclosure's coming, and they know what that means for the powers of the world, then they might be more willing to press that button, right? So we'll just say like a North Korea who understands, okay, the days are up. Your days are numbered because disclosure is coming in, and this is about to be a new world, and the power structure is going to change. Now, tyrannical leaders like that aren't going to take well to that, and I think that they would be more susceptible to being selfish enough to hit that button. So many layers to that, man. So many layers. Stargazer, people who read radar all day long can do the math. They know what they see. Exactly. And you try to, a lot of those skeptics try to discount people's eyes as not being a credible thing, when these are literally the portals to everything that you see, know in the world are your eyes. So you have to depend on your eyes in life, period. If we were in the wild and we needed to hunt for food, our eyes are part of that, right? Our five senses, six senses, all the senses that we have are necessary and valid. And for skeptics and people like that to say that your eyes are the least credible. So if we don't have eyes, then we have radar data and we have cameras, right? But as soon as we get camera data or radar data, they want to talk about the fact that these are electronic devices and subject to error and this. So what are we doing here? What are we really talking about, right? Okay, with that being said, this has been Science Fiction to Science Facts Movie Edition. And like I said, this isn't the call-in show. So this show runs a little bit differently, and you'll see that here in just a moment as we are getting out of Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition. And we are getting ready to take it on home. So with that being said, this is why we do it. The graphic is a little different on the screen, but still says the same thing. Positive progression in humanity. That's why we get together and have these talks. It feels good to be able to come back to the social dig and do one of my normal shows, get back into the groove of doing that, right? I think it's very important. We covered a lot of information today, right? A lot of information you could take to the bank. And then you see how the call-in show differs from a normal type of show, right? So we'll still be doing the call-in show. I think that's where we can just have a free-for-all and kind of hang out and address things. But when I do these shows, it's more of a a delivery as far as delivering information. So I really hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, this is so earlier in the day. 5 p.m. Pacific is when we normally do this, the normal show, right? So you guys have been so used to the call-in show coming in at midnight that you're not even paying attention to this time of day. But this will be the time of day that you should expect these normal shows to happen. So if you haven't already, just make sure you hit the notification bell. That way, when we do go live on these, you're instantly alerted and you'll be ready to go. But I'm going to be creating some more shows here soon, so you'll see them in the lineup. We should be definitely doing the call-in show this weekend. And also on After Hours, you definitely got to join me. We'll be having Rod Martin, my guy, my buddy, Roger Martin from Why the Big Secret and High Strangeness on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we are having the legend Preston Dennett. Preston Dennett is joining After Hours on Sunday. So it's going to be a jam-packed weekend. Plus, we have Drew Banky the following week and Margie K and Debbie Ziegelmeyer. So it's going to be epic. You guys just stay plugged in, stay tuned in. If you are watching from the background, you haven't subscribed, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. We love to see you back. Like I said, these aren't as interactive as far as being able to monitor the chat, but that's why we have the call-in show. So I thank you for coming in and being a part of this. I want to thank everybody who came in today. If I can cover everyone: Magneticus, Christine, Stargazer, Tamothman, Kurt M. Let's see, going back, Lex Diaz, thank you very much for coming in. John P. Adventures, we appreciate you. Anybody else that might be watching this on Team Replay, thank you for taking your time. Flat Six, thank you for coming in. Make sure you hit that like button. Let us know how you thought about the show, right? Outside of that, I'll be getting with you guys soon. Thanks for coming by the Social Dig, Season 2, Episode 1. Appreciate you. You guys are awesome, and talk to you again soon. Take care. All right, everybody. So that was an episode of the Social Dig, just a taste of what it is that we do. I really hope you enjoyed what you saw, and I hope it resonated with you, right? I hope it's something that you feel that you could come back and really enjoy and participate in the conversation. We usually do call-in shows after our after-hours show, at least once a week. And then we have a format-based show, which is what you saw today, usually once a week. We have season 1, which I did at least 44 episodes. So there's definitely a deep dive you can do there. I've had guests on like Tim Senor. I've had Tom King. I've had Preston Dennett over there, Jim Goodall, and a host of others, Luis Jimenez, a bunch of others. So it would appreciate it if you consider coming over and hitting that subscribe button. And once again, I mean, I got to go ahead and thank everybody who came by tonight. You guys always show up and show out, and I do appreciate that. So as we prepare to bring the show to a close, to all the space travelers, you are already a space traveler, so consider taking the next step and joining the club. That's right, you can join our Space Travelers Club for as little as $5 per month by joining our Patreon. We appreciate your support. To all our viewers and listeners across the globe, thanks for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. And what is that, you ask? We own the night. See you guys next weekend. Live shows. Dave Scott will be here tomorrow, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Pacific till midnight. You guys have a great rest of your night, and take care.